Streaming live on YouTube.
Yes, Chairman, we're good to go.
Good to go. Thank you much indeed. Well, good evening, members, and also members of the public who are watching on YouTube. A very warm welcome to this Daventry District Council full council meeting tonight. And first of all, we're having prayers from Councillor Alan Chandler.
Just a moment of quiet, everybody. Heavenly Father, we commend ourselves and our meeting and our business to your care this evening. Guide us and help us to listen carefully to what others have to say and to only speak thoughtfully and helpfully when it is our turn. Help us to complete all this business to the benefit of the residents of Daventry District, and we keep this in mind as we progress, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Alan. We move on to the next item, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 8th of October. Are you happy that those are correct minutes?
Agreed.
Yes, thank you.
Agreed.
Apologies for absence. The only apologies I've had is from Councillor Rupert Frost. Are there any other apologies we're aware of?
Councillor Richard Micklewright, Chairman, and Councillor Ian Robertson.
Thank you much indeed, Micklewright and Robertson. Thank you. Come to now declarations of members' interests. To receive declarations of members' interests, disclosable interests, and the nature of such interests in any of the following agenda items. Please declare now or at the time of the item if you feel it's appropriate to do so.
Could I declare an interest, please, Chair?
Yes, you can.
I refer to SG 58, Bleak 20, Bleak at 01. I will not take part in the debate or vote as I'm a Brixworth Parish Councillor where the S106 funds are intended for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
can we take a roll call now, please?
Roll call, yes, of course.
Right then, councillors, if you could just all confirm that you've got visual and audio, please. So, Councillor Amos. No. Councillor Amos, can you see and hear us?
Councillor Amos, you're on mute.
Yes, I have both. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Auger.
Yes, I have both. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Bunting, I don't think he's managed to get in yet.
Yes,
Councillor
I can see and hear you.
Councillor Chandler.
Yes to both.
Councillor Cribbin.
Yes to both.
Councillor Dabbs.
All working, thank you.
Councillor Guildford.
Yes to both.
Thank you. And same for Councillor Griffin. Councillor Harrington Carter.
Yes to both.
Councillor Harris.
Yes to both.
Councillor Hills.
Yes to both.
Councillor Amy Howard.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Wayne Howard.
Yes to both.
Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor James.
Yes to both. Thank you.
Councillor Lomax.
Confirm both,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Longley.
Yes to both. Thank you.
Councillor Matton.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Confirm yes to both.
Councillor Osborne. Councillor Osborne.
Both. Yes.
Thank you.
Both.
Councillor Parker.
Yes to both.
Councillor Peck.
That's absolutely fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you to both.
Councillor Randall.
Yes to both.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, thanks.
Councillor Shepherd.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
All good, thank you.
Councillor Warren.
Yes to both. Thank you.
Councillor Wesley.
Audio and visual confirmed.
Thank you. And Councillor Warno. Nope. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Thank you for that.
Chairman, sorry,
Yes.
before you go further, Reverend Dawn Stokes has actually just joined the meeting.
Oh, she really? Well, can I go to Dawn if that's possible for you? Well, go to Dawn because she's made the effort to get here. So I'll be happy for her to say a few prayers as well. So we have double prayers tonight from Dawn and Councillor Chandler. Have you let her in?
She is in the meeting, Chairman, but she may not have heard that. I think she's only just joined.
Okay. Can you check if she can hear us, please?
Reverend Stokes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm having trouble with my camera at the moment.
Dawn, is it possible without the camera, could you say a few prayers to us for the meeting?
Yes, I can do, yes.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Ah, there we are.
You can still hear you, Dawn.
I can, yes. Do you want me to do the prayers now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Let us pray. Lord God, as we meet together as a council for the last time this year, be with us all as we seek to make good decisions for our communities in Daventry District. Help us all to achieve a lasting legacy that will stand the district in good stead as we look towards a new phase in our governance. This evening, may we share and receive matters of business with open minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech. Give to us all a peaceful and restful Christmas and New Year. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you very much indeed for that. And welcome. You can stay as long as you like. It's very kind of you to make the effort to get here. Right, we now move on to Chairman's announcements. And I first of all want to say that in this very difficult climate of COVID, and I know how much people have suffered across the country and also in our own district area, I'd like to thank all the staff at Daventry District and all the emergency services and the police and ambulance and NHS locally for all the efforts they're doing to try and curtail this horrible virus. It's been great news received this week about the vaccinations, but of course we can't get carried away yet on that because clearly there's still plenty of time for the virus to still affect those who aren't going to get vaccinated in the next month or so. And so therefore it's very, very important that we continue to be vigilant and to operate in a careful way. So that's just on that particular issue of COVID. I also like to say that on more local matters now, that I'm very pleased that my fundraising efforts so far this year, a total of £870 has been raised. I also like to thank our leader, whose CD you don't have to buy, but you can always donate money to the two charities which are obviously on the back of his CD, which obviously are the not Reach for Health, my apologies, which are the, mine's gone blank now. I do apologise. My two
Time
charities
to talk.
are
Time to
aware,
talk. And Marie Curie.
Marie Curie, and the
Time to talk.
Time to talk. I do apologise. Thank you for that, Richard. So therefore, please feel free to donate money to those charities because all the money will go to those charities, not go anywhere else. You can have Richard's CD if you want it as a Christmas present. If not, then please put a donation in and that will be very gratefully received. It's a minimum donation of £10 per CD, but obviously you're entitled to put in what you want. But please be worth a listen because I've heard it and I think it's pretty good. So well done to you, Richard, on that one. Also, normally at Christmas, we have a buffet for members after the meeting. This year, obviously, we can't do that because of COVID. So what I've asked for is the money that would normally go to that buffet, I'm going to donate that money. It normally comes by the chairman, by the way. The chairman would normally pay for that buffet. I'll donate that money to Daventry Volunteer Centre to actually pay for food deliveries, for their help in helping the vulnerable in our area, to support them during this very difficult period. So that's where the money will go from tonight's meeting, which would normally have gone to members for their food and drink. So I hope you're happy with that. Apart from that, I've got nothing else to add at this stage. I think we should be mindful that obviously one of the things I want to do is try and protect people who are struggling, homeless people, and therefore hopefully that's where Daventry Volunteer Centre can help us. And they've confirmed that today. So without further ado, I now move on to questions on the council procedure rules number 10 and 11. And I'll ask, there's one question from a member of the public who's actually online, which is Anna Hughes.
Oh, thank you. I'm just checking you can hear me, which you can. Right.
You can do, yes, thanks, Anna. Yeah, thank you.
At 2 meetings I've attended recently, councillors have stated that they are winding down. So many issues are affecting our local communities beside the pandemic. Can I be assured that the current council will continue to resolve these issues? You have an obligation to provide services to the residents to and until vesting day on April the 1st.
Leader.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mrs. Hughes, for your question. And it's rather sad that any elected member would give that impression of winding down, because far from it, what with COVID-19 and local government reform, I don't think many of us have been more busier than we have been in our whole political career. But I'm very happy to give you the assurance that you seek with regard to this council, both members and of officers. We will be working to deliver all we can to the residents of Daventry District Council up until vesting day, the 1st of April 2021. But we are also working really hard to ensure that all the good policies, protocols and working practice of Daventry District Councils continue under the new West Northamptonshire Council.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Anna, for that question. It's always appreciated to get members of the public taking interest in the business of the council. We now move on questions under the Council Procedure Rule 11, which come from members. And obviously members have the right for a secondary question should they wish to have one. The first question tonight comes from Councillor Jonathan Harris to the Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. High standards in public life are essential and are at risk of being undermined. Bullying and intimidation are serious issues. Considering recent events, would the council leader assure the public, members and council employees alike that this council will not tolerate bullying in any form? As we transition to the new unitary, I hope that he would agree that it is important in any working environment to be clear that intent is not the issue. It is how the behaviour is received by the recipient that counts. As a member of the Appeals and Standards Committee, would the leader also reassure council employees that our processes are robust and that there would be no attempt to interfere with any process to make things seem more palatable? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Over to you, Leader.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Harris, for your question. The council does not tolerate bullying. This council does not tolerate bullying. We have robust policies in place to deal with this when it occurs. There is a bullying and harassment policy for employees, members, and employees are required to comply with all their relevant codes of conduct, and there is a protocol on officer-member relationships. These policies, codes and protocols set out a framework for behaviour and make it crystal clear that bullying and harassment are not acceptable. Officers are working again with colleagues across West Northamptonshire to ensure that these robust policies and procedures continue in the new unitary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor Harris?
Just to say thank you to the leader for the comprehensive response. Could I just urge that we maybe, as we move into the unitary for real, that maybe there is a process or programme of refreshing, rebriefing or retraining everybody on this important matter. Thank you.
Thank you. You okay, Councillor Auger? Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to our next question from Councillor Ken Ritchie to the leader.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask what measures DDC is taking to make electors aware of the right to vote by post and to facilitate applications for postal votes. We all hope that by May of next year, the pandemic, if not over, will at least be under control. Nevertheless, for some, a visit to a polling station may still be a real or a perceived health risk. Does the leader of the council ever accept the case for encouraging more people to vote by post? And will he ask officers to make postal voting a prominent part of their campaign to promote participation in the elections on 6th May?
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I know this is very close to your heart with regard to your experience with COVID. So voters are already being encouraged to apply early for postal votes to help the process run as smoothly as possible. An article is included in the latest edition of Daventry Calling, due to be delivered to every household in the district on Monday next week. Officers are working with colleagues across the West Northamptonshire councils in planning for the May elections, and a communication plan is being developed to encourage vote registration and voting. In addition, work is underway to ensure that residents can cast their votes safely during the ongoing corona pandemic, with a range of COVID-safe measures being planned for polling stations alongside the other usual options to apply to vote by post or by proxy. And just on a party political note, Councillor Ritchie, certainly the Conservative Party are encouraging people to vote by post, and I'm sure the other political parties will do the same in their literature. I think that may help deal with possible gatherings at polling stations.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a follow-up question, Councillor Ritchie?
Yes, if I can thank Councillor for that response, which is quite encouraging. Could I just ask too, though, that we ensure that the material that we use in promoting participation in these elections, that we make sure that we get across the fact that the elections are different from our normal elections. I don't mean because they are for our West Northants Council rather than Daventry Council, but it is not the norm in this district for people to vote where they have got 3 votes that they can cast rather than just having 1. We did have all out elections that had a number of 3-member wards back. It must have been about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, but it is not the norm. And experience from elsewhere suggests that where you do offer then people 3 votes, there are many who do not understand that they can vote for more than 1 candidate. There are others who don't understand that they don't need to vote for 3 if they don't have 3 that they like. There will, of course, be many who don't like any and decide not to vote for any.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I can assure you that this is on the minds of our leaders. Certainly, I've had conversations with Ian Vincent about this particular election, and that is clearly something that we need to explain to and will explain to voters so they understand what their democratic rights are when it comes down to ticking either 1 or 3 boxes. So thank you for your concern. Honestly, we will continue to push it and make sure it is crystal clear to all of our residents on how they can vote.
Many thanks for that clarification, Leader. We now move on to a question from Councillor Stephen Dabbs to the Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I start, I think I need to mention a slight note of interest in the subject matter. I would just like to say I live on Ashby Road, and this question relates to traffic schemes on that road. They would affect me, but I don't believe they would affect me as much as the hundreds of school children that use the road every day, none of whom, by the way, are related to me. So I don't think that this necessarily should remove me from being able to raise this subject. You can judge me otherwise. Here's the question anyway to Councillor Olga. On the 26th of June 2017, the Daventry Town Council agreed to pay Northamptonshire Highways £5,700 for them to quote for works to improve road safety on Ashby Road. And this was done on the proviso that DDC approved the use of Section 106 or SIL to complete the proposed works. I recollect that DDC never gave that undertaking, hence no improvements were forthcoming. I remind the leader that we have 4 school sites based along the lower southernmost stretches of Ashby Road as it descends quite steeply in parts towards the roundabout on Easton Way. Previous traffic surveys had proven significant numbers of drivers exceeded the set limit in this area. Hence the dangers to pedestrians, particularly school children, entering and exiting schools, the school sites still remain today. Would the leader please confirm the status of the above proposal, and if in suspension or otherwise put to one side, what would it take to put this back into a live project?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dabbs, and I haven't got my vested interest, but I did get involved when I was first elected at county with this particular project, and did some work with the JAG with regard to the speed of vehicles on that stretch. And I certainly agree that there are a number of schools though there, although at that time there wasn't an excessive amount of speeding going on, but obviously that is probably depending on when you do the particular survey. But Councillor Ritchie asked a very similar question to my predecessor, Councillor Miller, in October 2017. Councillor Miller gave a full response at that point, explaining the history and the support the council had provided up to that point. He concluded by saying, and I quote, "The council was no longer prepared to spend more money on this matter," close quote. The position at this point was therefore clear. As far as the future is concerned, we are now 4 months from the end of this council, and vesting day for Northamptonshire Council comes on the 1st of April. So with that in mind, if I and yourself get elected, I am happy, although I won't be standing for that particular area, to work with you, because we'll have one authority that combines all services instead of passing it from one authority to another. We will have one authority, and I think it's a project that's well worth looking. I think you raise a really good point about the school and those children, and especially with regard to the hill and as you come over that summit. I think it does need looking at, and I'm quite happy to work with you, sir, if we both get elected, to try and get something done on that particular path. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Dabbs, you want a follow-up question?
No follow-up question, Chair, but I thank the leader for his comments, and I take those as quite positive. Let's move it forward when we get the chance in the next administration.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Next question is from Councillor Wendy Randall to the leader.
Thank you, Chair. At the council meeting on the 8th of October, report SG 25/2002, use of Southbrook Community Centre, there was a recommendation to offer the running of the centre to a community group for a peppercorn rent. A community group who are well known within the town contacted me saying they were very interested, had lots of ideas that would involve the community, but wasn't sure who the best person to make contact with. As you are all aware, I forwarded that email on to you all and the senior management team. The group was contacted by an officer and a meeting was arranged. They looked around the building and it all seemed very positive. So I was therefore very surprised to read a post on the 12th of November that future housing groups, Daventry District Council, Bromford Housing, Groundwork, Orbit Group, Northamptonshire County Council and Daventry Volunteer Centre were working together to develop a plan to improve the outdoor spaces on the Southbrook estate and turn the community centre into a vibrant centre for hosting events and activities that everyone can get involved in. This seems to have been moved forward at an amazing speed to have all the above groups involved. Please can you update this council on where we are regarding this building?
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Leader.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Randall, for your question. I can confirm that council officers met with several established local community groups, including the one you referred to, who expressed an interest in the community centre. In November, the council and future housings groups worked with other stakeholders, consult with Southbrook residents to develop a vision for the outside space of the estate, including wildflower meadows, an outdoor gym, children's playground and car parking. You know, car parking is a massive problem on some of our estates. That's just some of the ideas for improvement. Residents were also asked to contribute their own ideas. It sounds like you have seen some of the social media coverage relating to that, as you mentioned in your question. Several additional questions, which included some additional questions about the future of the centre and how residents would like things to be run. The consultation responses are still being analysed, but just from initial assessment, it is clear that a lot of local people are interested in being involved in setting up a new group to run Southbrook Community Centre and shape other community spaces and activities in the neighbourhood. This is really good news for Southbrook. Daventry District Council and other partners will continue to support the group as this is established, and obviously that will be carried over through to the new unitary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Auger. Councillor Randall, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Yes, and I welcome this. I just wish it had done beforehand, because obviously then we wouldn't have got to that recommendation that we did at the previous council meeting. And so, yes, some great ideas coming forward. The question that I would like to ask is that we know that that building is not in a good state of repair. We know that we heard from the last meeting that over the next course of years that is going to cost a considerable amount of money. Who is it that's going to foot the bill for that? Or are we going to let it out in a good state of repair before these community groups come forward? Or are we going to expect them to take on those costs?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I don't have that detail, but unless we have an officer who can respond now, if not, Chair, may I suggest that we officers respond in writing to Councillor Randall with regard to that detail.
And copy all the members in, Councillor Auger.
Yes, please, yeah. I don't know whether someone can answer it now.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Randall. And you've got last question comes from Councillor Randall again this time. Over to you, Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. Right, okay. Let's see where I've got to. Many of you are aware that we have an empty hotel on the edge of Daventry. It is still a frequent hot topic on social media. At the end of 2019, the Job Centre held a recruitment day as a potential buyer had been found and they wanted to get the hotel up and running at lightning speed. I went down to the Job Centre as I've asked many times over the years why the building couldn't be used to house homeless people, but always told it wasn't possible due to the hotel being unlivable. I expressed my concerns for the jobless people that were being given false hopes, and a year on, nothing has happened. Is this council aware of what has happened, and is the building now being charged full business rates?
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Leader.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Councillor Randall, for your question. The 148-room landmark hotel is substantially unused. There are 2 rooms inhabited by caretakers, each listed for council tax as Band A. Business rates are based on the hotel's occupancy. The rateable value is set by the valuation office and not the council. The current rateable value is £750 because the building is not being used as a hotel. When procuring bed and breakfast for temporary accommodation of homeless people, the council would only use a properly operated hotel or guest house. As far as the council is aware, the current owner of the hotel has not reached any agreement to sell it for use as a hotel or indeed for any other purpose. As you will know, the council is working on a master plan for the area allocated for development, including the hotel site. This should support any action necessary to resolve the issue once and for all, although clearly any action would now be in the hands of West Northampton Council when it's established on the 1st of April.
Thank you, Councillor Auger. Councillor Randall, follow-up question?
No, Chair, but I wasn't aware that there were 2 rooms in use. I was always led to believe it was just one. And I did wonder actually how you go about evaluating a hotel into then like livable accommodation, like a band A, because that seems quite a, how do you do that? How do you evaluate a hotel building into just a normal residential building?
Yeah, may I suggest that either when you have talk to an officer or the valuation office who actually have that responsibility, I'm unaware of that detail.
Thank you. Very much indeed for all the participants and the questions today, and for you, Leader, for responding to them. We now move on to motion under Council Procedure Rule 12. This is item 7.1 on your agenda. Interestingly enough, this is obviously going to be debated later in the meeting on item 11 on the Town Centre Vision paper. And what we didn't want to do tonight as chairman, we didn't want to duplicate any debate, and therefore probably be better if it's referred to the new Daventry Town Centre Vision 2035 on item 11. I spoke to Councillor Ritchie earlier today, the proposer of the motion, and he seemed to be happy to do that. Over to you, Councillor Ritchie. Would you be happy to postpone it or to that point in the meeting?
Yes, thank you. I mean, it is a defect, I think, in our procedures that opposition members who wish things to be discussed at a council meeting have got to put forward motions when they don't know what else is going to be on the agenda. Something that perhaps Councillor Brown can think a bit about while he does his work on the procedures for the new unitary. But yes, I agree that it makes sense that we put the 2 discussions on the vision together, as clearly there will be some overlap. We don't wish to withdraw our motion because whether or not the motion is passed, there is nothing in it that negates any part of the effective motion from the strategy group. Or does it come from the strategy group? The motion that is there in front of the council about proceeding with the second stage of the consultation can quite happily fit with the motion that we have put forwards. So we're happy to discuss it when we get to that point in the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ritchie. I have to say, as you probably are aware, that this is not the first time the situation has arisen. In fact, last year, I think it was you again, were involved in a motion which, when we arrived at the strategy group recommendation, that proposal was put and seconded and debate followed. So before being put to the vote, you were then invited to present the motion, and I think we'll do the same tonight. So we'll have a debate on the strategy group item, and then you'd be allowed to put forward your motion, which will then be in light of a debate. The motion was then seconded by someone, and then obviously council to vote on the strategy group recommendation before then inviting a vote on the motion. So that's what I intend to do tonight. So we have a vote on the recommendation, then a vote on your motion, Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I wonder if you could take that the other way around. If you would like to go with the motion to proceed with the consultation first, we would want to move our motion as an amendment to it, because I think that the position that some of us would take on the motion to proceed with the consultation would depend on the nature of that consultation.
I'm persuaded by the argument, Councillor Ritchie, so I think we'll do it that way around. Thank you. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to our second motion. So that motion then, is it agreed by council? Are you happy for that to be carried forward to item 11 on the agenda, council? Any objections? No, can't see any. Okay, we move on now to the second motion, which is from Councillors Harris and Lomax. And I'll hand over to you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. We've brought this motion to give voice to our residents. There are some 425 councils in the UK. If you apply a simple average It means that of the 3 million excluded for any benefit in regard to COVID, we are likely to have thousands of people and businesses that fall into this category in our area. So why does this matter to us? These people are us. They live amongst us. They contribute to our local economies. They pay their council taxes, just like everyone else. Denying support to these people is ultimately hindering our local economic recovery. Many of the people affected run businesses that are the lifeblood of our economy. These are the very people who we should be investing in to rebuild our economy. I refer to the substantive resolution of this motion, which is where we wish to simply use our voice as a council to speak on behalf of those that we represent, those that in fact elected us. People have been told in many instances by their MP that supporting them would be, to quote, a risk to the taxpayer's purse. I simply say, really? I refer to the points made in the motion. There are clearly questions about some recent national procurement processes that have been used. Indeed, I would argue that parish councils in many instances have a more robust tendering process than government, perhaps. The excluded are not tax evaders or avoiders. They are people like you and I. They work hard to earn a crust. They are often the creatives, the idea generators, the entertainers that demonstrate the true quality of British inventiveness. If you have any interest in live music, theatre, film and television, then you will know that these are some of the people that we're talking about. Self-employed freelancers or small limited companies helping the UK earn billions. It's an extremely wide and diverse group. It is estimated in 2018 that the theatre industry was worth £101.5 billion, an industry that at the time was growing at twice the rate of the UK economy. It's the same story for the UK film industry, valued at over £6 billion in 2017, with a further £2.6 billion in exports. I acknowledge the grants given to many theatres throughout the UK, but the buildings and institutions only exist with the people. Many of these people have fallen through the cracks of support available. I use the creative sector to illustrate that there are many other sectors making significant contributions in a very similar way. Let's take a couple of local examples. A resident in my ward, for instance, a highly qualified IT consultant who has worked for 40 years. Unfortunately, they have no assets due to personal circumstances and have lost a contract due to COVID. Universal credit and money saved for their pension got to them through the summer, but they have now VAT and personal debt in tax payments to make. They have obtained a short-term contract, but this requires them to work 100 miles away, so they now have high petrol and subsistence cost. A resident from an alternative ward runs a small business which has been badly affected by COVID. Their business has been closed since March, but they have been excluded from all meaningful government support. Despite many months of campaigning for parity with groups such as Excluded UK and calling repeatedly on our local MP to use his voice and raise the issue, they are still 9 months on, frozen out of the emergency support schemes. If this continues, they will not have a business to go back to once the crisis is over. This person states, I've contacted my councillors by email on 2 occasions, names the dates specifically, 20th of August and 16th of November, to ask for help, but I haven't received a response. I want to remind councillors that surely our primary role, according to the LGA, is to respond to our residents' queries and investigate their concerns through casework. Even if we can't solve matters, we can surely have the decency of being responsive. Just today, I've had contact from another resident in my ward who is in the travel sector. It's really disappointing to hear feedback that he was shocked that an elected official had bothered to call him back in response to his email. I appreciate that we all have very busy schedules and that things can be missed. However, surely it is our duty to at least respond to our residents, even if we can't, in fact, resolve their issues. The excluded groups simply don't fit into the current rules. At the end of the day, this Sovereign Council follows government orders, especially in regard to the recent council tax grant awards. But we do have a voice. I'm simply proposing that we use that voice. It's the least that we can do as a council to speak on behalf of these individuals and companies. This is about caring. It's about fairness. It's about doing the right thing. This is about representing our residents. I hope that members see this issue in this light and not along party lines. My wish, Chair,
That's 5 minutes, Chairman.
I'll just sum up.
Okay, thank you. Just wrap up very quickly, please, Jonathan.
Okay, my wish, Chair, if this motion is passed, that every councillor signs these letters, or at the very least, the leaders of our 3 groups, along with our independent members. I therefore encourage all members to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you much indeed. I would like to remind members that there's a 5-minute limit, and Jeffrey's there clocking it all in, so it'd be great if you could try and keep to that 5 minutes. Councillor, thanks for that, Councillor Harris. I believe that Councillor Lomax, you're going to second this, are you? Councillor Catherine Lomax.
I'm so sorry. Am I
No
now?
problem, Catherine, we can hear you.
I'm now live. Good.
You're live. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. This is something that affects many of our small local tradespeople and businesses, which are so essential to local economy and to our communities. I've been contacted by people within my ward who have been affected by their inability to key into any of the help which is being offered. In other words, they're part of the excluded 3 million that we've been talking about. We may not be able to do much for them financially as a council, but we can do a little bit more than make sympathetic noises. These are our residents. They voted for us. We represent them. To do this would breach no political principles, but it would show understanding of their situation and humanity, solidarity with them and compassion. I second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lomax. I understand, Councillor Peck, you want to respond to this?
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Sarah Peck.
So I think the question being asked here is, does this council? Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Sarah.
Hello?
Yes, that's
Can you hear
fine.
me?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the question being asked here is, does this council believe that the government has done enough to support people and their jobs during the pandemic? And I completely get the strength of feeling in this issue. On a positive note, I'm sure we were all pleased to hear that the UK has become the first country to have a clinically approved vaccine for supply. But there is no doubt that this virus has affected everyone, and making sure that people have the right support has been absolutely essential. I do honestly believe that this government has mounted one of the most aggressive economic responses to the pandemic in the world, pledging absolutely billions of pounds to support businesses through the crisis. Just to really quickly put this on a national context, so far the government is spending 280 billion on measures to fight COVID-19, and that includes 73 billion for measures to support jobs. The NHS and other public services have been given an extra 127 billion.
Hello, Sarah. We appear to have lost Sarah, Tony. Is that right?
To combat the pandemic.
Hi, Sarah. You keep cutting in and out a little bit.
66 billion will be spent on grants to support. Oh.
You need to get broadband sorted out when we get to Unitary.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear you now, Sarah? Yes.
Councillor Peck, it may be worth turning your video off. It may give you a better audio channel.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear you now, Sarah? That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know where I got to, but what I was saying is, so far this government has spent 280 billion on measures to fight COVID. And on top of this, we've got to remember that the government will raise around 100 billion less in taxes. Can you hear that?
You hear that? That's fine, Sarah.
Chairman, her link appears to have dropped out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I can say that this council completely understands that some people have experienced Hello? Yeah, hello? Can anyone?
You keep cutting in and out, Sarah. Have you got much more to say? This is coming from Brixworth, by the way. It's not exactly coming from too far away. Yeah.
I've got quite a bit to say on this, but yeah. If you can't hear me, sorry.
No problem, Sarah. Are you basically objecting to the motion, rejecting it?
Chairman, Councillor Peck has dropped out of the meeting now, so
okay,
we'll have to move on to other speakers.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, can I ask you to speak, sir?
Chairman, I was going to wait a little and see if the debate progressed at all on the matter.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Councillor Brown. I wanted to say we have 2 Lib Dems so far speak. We have 2 Conservatives, well, 1.5 at the moment. I wanted to know if Labour had any speakers, just 2 speakers from Labour on this motion. If you want to speak, please let me know now. Put your hand up. Okay, we got Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Dabbs. Who would like to go first? Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Chair. Very, very briefly, I'm sorry that we weren't able to hear everything that Councillor Peck had to say, but yeah. I don't argue with the fact that the government has done good things for very many people. But it strikes me that this motion is not about that. It's about the people who have been left out. And I think it comes down to me to be one of fairness, that if we are aware that there is a section of our community that has got difficulties that are not being recognised by the government, then it makes sense for us simply as a council to alert the government, to elect our national politicians that their packages, while good for some, don't necessarily go far enough, and they need to take another look at them. It strikes me it's not as if it's asking the council to use resources. It's not things that are within the control of the council. But we are here. We represent our constituents, and our constituents include many people who will fall into this category of people who are suffering as a result of suffering economically as a result of the pandemic, and we therefore should be making sure that our local MP and that our government is aware of that.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Dabbs.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Disappointing not to be able to hear the whole of Councillor Peck's statement, but also disappointing that she's actually trotting out the normal defence that government seems to put out, which is to spout figures. We're spending this, that, and the other, probably with the use of record numbers. I didn't hear any record numbers, but typically the government will say we're spending record numbers, which is a curiously stupid thing to always say, because if you take, for instance, most people's salaries, that they're being paid a record amount because it's the maximum amount they'll have ever been paid because of annual pay increases. So it's a stupid comment to make. But I think, you know, I echo what's been said by the Lib Dems and by Councillor Ritchie, that it doesn't matter how much the government is throwing its cash around. If you're caught between these various schemes and you don't get any cash, you've lost your job and you're in dire straits, that has no impact that you're spending lots of money, because you need some of that money. So I think the government, instead of spouting figures like they're going out of fashion, is to grab hold of that magic money tree, which seems to exist at the drop of a hat when required, especially when you've got pet COVID schemes that need financing that are not properly checked out. Give it a good shake and address these people who have problems. You know, people who will be coming up to Christmas, cupboards empty, bank accounts empty, in despair. How many suicides will we get over Christmas or in the new year? We don't want to entertain that. So let's think about this. Let's vote for the motion and let's pass some words of encouragement to the government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Councillor Brown, can I come to you now? We still can't connect to Councillor Peck at the moment.
Certainly, Chairman. Thank you very much. I think each and every one of us will sympathise greatly with anyone who finds themselves in a precarious financial situation because of the crisis that has befallen not just this country, but the whole world. However, I do think there's something inherently unfair in the attempt to mislead people into thinking that somehow a letter from Daventry District Council will alert government to something that they're not already very well aware of. This issue has been debated time and time again in Parliament. The Chancellor, my apologies, Rishi Sunak, has addressed virtually all of the points, if not all of them, that are raised by this motion. And the motion in and of itself is, it admits that it is a national issue and not a local one. I really don't think that we should be demoting the status of this district council to a typing pool, no matter how worthy the issue, no matter how much we care about the people affected by what's going on nationally. We are here to manage local services. We're here to look after the people in all of the ways in which we're empowered to do so. We are not here to write to government to try and influence national policy, apart from, of course, when it directly influences this very council. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, as this is not a district council matter, it is a matter for the Westminster government that has been debated at length in the House of Commons. I formally move that the question be now put.
Well, thank you much indeed, Councillor Brown. I'm minded that we had two speakers from the Lib Dems, 1.5 from our Conservatives because Paul Sarah got cut off, Councillor Peck, and 2 from Labour. So I think in the sense that this is a national issue rather than a local one, I'm happy to move to a vote. And obviously, if people want to use their electronic hands.
Chair, do I not have the right to address the comments?
You do, yes. Coming back to you, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I would like to
come back to you. Sorry, Councillor Harris. Back to you, Councillor Harris.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yes, I would make a few additional comments to those that I've heard this evening. Again, I would echo the comments made by Councillor Dabbs. I also completely recognise that this is clearly a national issue. It's a massive issue globally, and a large amount of money has been put aside and invested for various groups. We're simply talking about a large group of people, 3 million people, who are not covered by any scheme whatsoever. It's very interesting to hear the numbers trotted out, but these are individuals who pay taxes. And although there are 100, I think the number that I heard during the breaking up of the call-in, 100 billion less in taxes. Well, if you take 3 million people out, that's even less taxes that are going to get paid back into the system. So it's cyclical. I think we can all agree it's cyclical. One of the things that I think the Tories have always believed in is trickle-down economics. Well, if people have no money to spend, there is no money to go back into the economy. So that's the first point I would like to make. I don't think our motion simply suggests that Daventry Council should be a typing pool. I think that's if I might say, a rather ridiculous thing to say. This is an issue of national importance. It affects probably a considerable number of people locally. I would estimate it's around the 5,000 to 6,000 people if you simply do the very basic maths. We are elected to represent them. We are elected to represent them on all issues and all matters, not simply about whether we provide great local services for them. That's not what this is about. And if we can't, as a council, simply write some letters on their behalf to raise awareness for this matter, then I think it's extremely disappointing. And in fact, I would go so far as to say we should be embarrassed.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Obviously, you always have the right to the MP anyway, as you'll be aware, or the Minister of State in an individual right as well.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, those actions have been taken.
Thank you much indeed. Thank you for that. So I now want to move to the vote. Can you please use your electronic hands-free Tony Gillett, if I can, or is it for Jevley?
Chairman, we're going to run a poll for voting this evening, so we'll launch the poll in a second.
Okay, thank you much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, members, hopefully this will work. I'm just launching the poll now, and then you'll have 20 seconds.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So this is for the motion or against the motion, yeah?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Right, it's 58% have voted against, 31% in favour, and 12% have abstained.
Thank you very much indeed. And so, motion.
Chair, as a point of order, can I ask that we make a note of those that voted for the motion, if possible, please?
Tony Gillett, is that possible?
Yes, Chairman, if those who voted for would like to indicate by raising their hands, and we'll pick those up.
Sorry, Tony, I could not vote. It never appeared on my screen. I could not press any button. Councillor Irving Swift.
We have 26 people voting, Tony.
Yes, Chairman, I can't understand why it's not appeared for Councillor Irving Swift, but we've run a poll and that poll is closed now. So the vote has been recorded. We will record those voting for the motion as requested. If those who voted for the motion would like to raise their physical hands now, and we'll capture those.
You can do that now, please. And physical hands, okay.
Yeah, Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Dabbs, Councillor Lomax, Councillor Randall, Councillor Harris, and Councillor Wayne Howard, and Councillor Jason Pritchard.
Thank you. Okay, and so the point is, Councillor Irving Swift, your vote wouldn't have made a difference either way. So, but I don't understand why you couldn't vote. I don't understand that one. But anyway, thank you much indeed. So, and thank you for that debate, and thank you much indeed for the motion, Councillor Harris. And we now move on to the next item, which is reports of committees. This is purely for information purposes, and obviously any alterations should have been forwarded to the officers by now. So can I take those reports as read? Purely for information purposes.
Agreed.
Okay. Agreed. Now we move on to recommendations of committees, which is page 55 in your papers. And the first one tonight is the confirmation of Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights for change of use from offices to dwellings. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware, I'm sure, that Article 4 direction can be used to remove some permitted development rights from specified properties if that is felt to be the right thing to do under the circumstances. And we've used them mostly in relation to properties within conservation areas. This was a recommendation brought about by the fact that permitted development rights allow the change of use of offices Class BA, B1A to Class C3 dwelling houses without seeking planning permission. It is obvious to everybody, I think, that there are dangers associated with this permitted development. Particularly, it could be damaging to the economy of the area to which it might be applied. So we carried out a consultation suggesting that we should place an article for direction to remove this permitted development right from offices for the change of use from offices to dwellings in Daventry town centre and in specific strategic employment areas in the district in order to protect the economic value of those buildings. This consultation was carried out over a 6-week period, as is normal, and we received 4 responses from parish councils. The Daventry Town Council and 1 resident had responded to the consultation. All of those responses have been supportive of the proposal. We discovered while this process was going on that the government had recently changed permitted development rights and usage charges such that offices are allowed to be demolished and houses built in their place. But since this requires prior approval from the local planning authority and that it also includes a consideration of amenity, it is felt that it's still worth doing this Article 4 direction as specified. So what I'm asking, Chairman, is that the Council should support the recommendation that Article 4 directions to remove permitted development rights for changes of use from Class B1A offices to Class C3 dwelling houses be confirmed in Daventry Town Centre and the specified strategic employment areas within the district.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Osborne.
Yes. Wait a minute. We're not.
Hear you, Steve. We can hear you.
Yeah, it's all right. I was. Okay. It's a pleasure to second this. Article 4 direction. Although I think it's the most ridiculous name given for it, it sounds like a turning off the M6, 50 miles north of Birmingham. It is a silly terminology, but what it actually does, it conserves conservation areas, or helps to, amongst other things, and that's the main point of it. So it is my absolute pleasure to second this recommendation.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Osborne. I haven't got any other speakers lined up to speak. Please show your hand now. If not, we'll move then to the vote. Move to the vote, please.
You have 20 seconds, members. %89 voted in favour, 4% against and 7% abstained.
Very much, Steve Jevley. So that's gone through. Thank you. We move on to the second item, adoption of Drayton Park design statement. Councillor Chandler again.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may be familiar with the idea of what is usually termed as village design statement, which is a supplementary planning document which sets out the characteristics of an area and usually a village or part of a parish and describes them and
Cecile voted on that one.
They might remain that way. This is a design statement for Drayton Park, which I'm sure members will realise is a smallish area of housing next to the reservoir. It went out for consultation in accordance with policy. There was a consultation for 6 weeks. Due to the lockdown and as a result of the pandemic, a second consultation was carried out, and that has resulted in some editorial and technical changes. It is now proposed that the modifications to the Drayton Park design statement in response to the representations be approved, that further minor editorial changes be made so that it's represents the final document to be adopted, and therefore that the revised design statement for Drayton Park be adopted as a supplementary planning document. I ask members to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Chandler has said all that's necessary, other than me to say as a member that represents that ward, that I welcome this document, because I hope it will help preserve the uniqueness of this development in the context of Daventry Town, and unique it is. And I hope when it's adopted as a supplementary planning document, it will help guide decisions to maintain this uniqueness and also its ambience and the biodiversity too in that particular location. So well done to the residents of Drayton Park, and I have pleasure in seconding this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Councillor James. I've got no other speakers showing their hands at the moment. So on that basis, can we move to the vote, please, Jemily?
Members, you have 20 seconds. That's unanimous, Chairman.
So 100% in favour. Thank you very much indeed for that. Members just contacted me to say members are waving their hands at the screen. That's not the way to get my attention. The way to get my attention is to use the electronic hands, which you have on your system there. And you put your hand up, then I'll make sure you speak. I can't guarantee it if you just wave at the screen, because obviously it's got 40 people on the screen at the moment, and I just don't see it that way. So yes, Ken, I see you now. You're muted, Ken. Okay,
I just wanted to point out that my electronic hand was raised a while ago, but it didn't receive any attention.
No, well, your hand did raise some time ago, but then went down again. So I see you didn't want to speak.
Because you had moved on to another issue. But let me just
go on, Tom.
The issue I wanted to raise is I would be grateful if, when we have a vote, we can have the number of votes and not the percentages. There are occasions which I find it mathematically exceptionally difficult to work out how these percentages could be arrived at with a number of people voting.
No problem. The last vote, there are 28 people voting for, and none against, none abstaining.
The numbers appear on the poll.
That makes it easy.
Yeah. But I did see your hand up before, Councillor Richard, then it went down again. That's why I didn't call you. That's on not the last item, the one before. But your hand, your little hand is working, so I've seen it now. Okay, sir, thank you. So that one's approved. We move on to the next item now, which is the Food and Health and Safety Service Plans. Councillor Cribbin.
Thank you, Chair. This item went to strategy group on the 12th of November. We had a reasonable debate on that point. I've got a recommendation tonight that the council approve the food service plan and health and safety service plan for year 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 21, and second, that the council recognises that achievement of the service plan performance measures will be materially affected by the environmental health services input into COVID-19 response. Now at strategy, I explained to the members there that obviously this is a yearly thing that we do every year. We can't bring it forward before the end of March 2020 for this year, because we need figures and things from last year to feed into and inform the service plan going forward. But obviously we've got it coming to council. It has to be approved by full council. That's part of the rules. We have to get it approved by members. I want to just say at this point that the environmental health team has been exceptionally busy dealing with everything to do, COVID related, helping to get our people out there to be COVID secure and be as safe for the residents as possible. So I want to express at this point my thanks as portfolio holder to all the environmental health teams or the whole team for all the hard work they've done throughout the whole of the environment, the COVID pandemic. It's been absolutely amazing what they've managed to achieve. But going forward, this service plan here may well be affected. We have to accept that we are going to be probably prioritising our efforts for this year on the serious cases where we've risk assessed which things need to be done, and therefore the minor things are probably going to have to be prioritised. Sorry, the major things being prioritised over the minor things. So just putting this to full council tonight, it's a relatively straightforward plan, and I hope that members will accept the plan going forward. So it's already been discussed at strategy group, and let's put this forward to full council tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Cribbin. I'm sure all members would actually support you in your high words or your very strong words of encouragement about the staff and their efforts during this pandemic. So thank you for that. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cribbin gave a very good account of this at the strategy group, and I'm very happy to support it, and I'd like to second it. Thank you, Chair. No further comment.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Morgan. I see no hands at the moment wanting to speak. So on that basis, can we move to the vote, please?
Members, you have got 20 seconds. There's 28 voting in favour, none against.
No abstentions. Thank
No
you. So that's carried. Thank you. We now move on to our next item, which is release of Section 106 funding from planning application. Councillor Alan Hills.
Thank you, Chairman. Fellow members, this is actually a recommendation to approve a funding request totaling £176,308,000 from a development east of Northampton Road, Brixworth. And it goes back to 2014, reference DA 2014/0900. And this is for allocating 5,058 for Brixworth short map bowls and 171,250 to Brixworth Parish Council. Now, as I said at strategy, as a council prior to the COVID virus, we had an excellent record in encouraging and promoting sport and physical activity. And as I said then at strategy, this ticks all the boxes. The sum involved is unallocated Section 106 funding. There's already been collected, and this funding will enable these projects to proceed for the benefit of the residents of Brixworth and also those in the neighbouring villages. This received unanimous support of strategy, and I would ask full council to do the same tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second this proposal, and I think this is due recognition of the significant housing development that there has been in Brixworth, particularly along the Northampton Road. So I commend it to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bunting. Councillor John Shepherd. John, you muted? Are you muted, John?
Thank you, Chairman. We should have a poor box for £1 or 50p for each member that doesn't unmute, because I do it all the time. Sorry.
So much you put it in, John.
Well, exactly. I'm sure this is a splendid idea. I've no objection in principle. I'm just curious as to how we end up with some unallocated 106 cash lying around, because as I understand it, the 106 document contains a whole number of specifically allocated funds which the developer and landowner agree to pay over to us for specific purposes, most of which are ring-fenced. So can we hear how we end up with these spare sort of slush funds that we can allocate ourselves?
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Is Audrey there to answer that question?
We got Richard Hughes instead.
Oh, Richard Hughes, my apologies. Richard?
The Section 106 is specify in general terms what you can spend it upon, and when there's any money left over. That's what this report is looking at.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Shepherd?
Okay, so it's good draftsmanship for whoever got involved in 106 in the first place to enable this to flexibility on cash to be allocated in such a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Right, so that one has been approved. Oh, sorry, Councillor Harris. Apologise.
That's okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as the one of the district councillors for Brixworth, I recognise there's been a great deal of work and effort gone into the thoughts and plans around this. So I hope that everyone in the council tonight agrees and supports this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Well, we'll find out now, Councillor Harris. So can you set this up, please, Jebly, for a vote?
Chairman, you've got another speaker indicated.
You must, yeah. Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, and you have another councillor for the Brixworth ward who will never said a word, but Kevin Parker was very involved, and I'm sure he will be delighted too. And I can say that because I'm their county councillor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you. Can we move to the vote now, please, Jebly?
Members, you have 20 seconds. Chairman, we've got 24 voting in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you for that, Marina. And so not quite there, Jonathan, but still a very commanding result overall. So that's been approved. Thank you. Can we move now on to Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review 2020/2021? Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a concise document, actually. Obviously, we have a requirement to report on this, which was discussed at strategy. There's only really 2 key highlights on this, which form these 2 recommendations. The first is that we actually note the report. And one of the highlights I'd like to make is members will know that actually we've been very prudent in this local authority, and we've had a very wise investment strategy and been able to get decent returns, notwithstanding the challenges. And of course, the paper also sets out some of the background challenges, of course, which we're all familiar with as a result of COVID, financial impact, etc. And one of the second recommendation really states that the requirement for us to have a more flexible lending approach. Of course, as we all know, we haven't got long left of this local authority, but we still place the money that we look after. And we're basically asking here to have a window of 5 years for the maturity. It's explained in the strategy papers, and the 151 officer also added some comments for clarity for members on that one. So that's number one. And the second one, we've in the document that I'd like to raise, and that is, because we're normally very efficient at earning interest, which obviously gets put back into the council's coffers, we had a smaller variance than usual to our good performance on this. We're £50,000 adrift to where we wanted to be, but notwithstanding that, basically, given the situations, that paper sets out where the money's looked after and puts that recommendation forward. That's all on that one, Chair. It's quite a straightforward paper, and we discussed it at strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. I can't see any more hands going up to speak. If that's the case, can we move to the vote, please, Jebly?
Right, members, you've got 20 seconds. Got 26 voting in favour, none against and 2 abstentions.
That's clearly passed. So thank you for that, Councillor Morgan. We move on to your next one, Councillor Morgan. Capital and Revenue Budget Medium-Term Financial Plan and Community Infrastructure Levy Programme Update. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the fortunate item about this agenda item is that by this point, most of this is wrapped up anyway. So, for instance, we've already spoken earlier about the investment in the food safety, etc. So, I'm not going to go through these exhaustively. They're pretty self-explanatory. At the end of the recommendations, there we talk about such as the shopfront scheme, etc., which is very well received and was well received at strategy. And also the second revenue bid relates to the food hygiene. So that's how we presented that information. I'd hope the members wouldn't disagree with any of those investments. And really, there's not much else to add than that. What's in the paper? Of course, it's been challenging. We haven't got a budget to put forward this time, of course, which normally wise members would see. We start putting tables and presenting those to members, of course, because of the local authority and the coffers moving into the new authority next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second the report. Councillor Morgan's explained the contents quite adequately, and I think it's broadly positive. The one thing to note is, of course, the sad fact that there is no budget for Daventry District Council this time around, which gives us an idea of just how close we are to forming our new councils. But in line with the concerns raised by Anna Hughes at the start of this meeting, I think we need to give a very clear message to all our residents that the hard work continues at Daventry District Council, and we will continue providing the services that we budgeted for in this financial year, right up until the very last day of this council's existence.
Thanks for that, Councillor Brown. Councillor Irving-Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, on point number 4, it's about Welford, and Welford is in my ward. I can tell you I spoke with the parish and they are absolutely delighted. And it's something which is very important, because in villages, everything we can do for the young and sport for the elderly is much more than it's brings the community together. So it's a great project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Irving-Swift. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting, isn't it? So to echo both of those, I mean, even at this stage, we're making positive investments in our communities. And as Councillor Brown quite correctly says, that normally at this point, I'd be up on my feet, hopefully in the chamber, for a bit longer, talking through the plans for next year. And it's all very sad we're in this situation. But I think notwithstanding that, I'd like to congratulate the 151 officer and the finance team and all the officers for actually leaving us in very good shape as we approach that new unitary authority. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure those thoughts are agreed by everyone listening on the meeting tonight, Councillor Morgan. So thank you for that, and respect to our staff. Thank you. So generally, can we move now to the vote? Just another hands up. Can we move to the vote, please?
Yes, members, you've got 20 seconds. So, Chairman, that's 27 voting in favour and 1 abstention.
Thank you much indeed. So that's clearly passed. So that's agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. We move on to the next agenda item, which is the Scrutiny Improvement Committee Annual Report. And I hand over to their Chairman, Councillor Mark Wesley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure members don't really want me to read it out. It's there in the documents. I believe it's just to be noted anyway. It was accepted by Scrutiny and Improvement, so the report is there for any comments or any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Is that you, Councillor Auger?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Wesley and those who serve on that Scrutiny and Improvement Committee. You know, it is important that we have independent-minded people to look at what we're doing and to inquire and to test and challenge. And I'm grateful for that. That has been the spirit of this SNI, and I'm very grateful for the service, because it actually improves what we do for the people of Daventry. So my thanks to him and his team.
Thank you, Councillor Auger. And I think that's merited, actually, Councillor Wesley. You are a very independent mind, and I think that's very helpful when it comes to scrutiny and improvement. Are there any other comments from anyone? No hands showing. So I assume we just note the report and move on. Thank you. Can we now move on to the item 11, which also goes back to the motion which we now defer to this item, the new Daventry Town Centre Vision 2035 Phase 2 consultation. And I hand over to Councillor David James.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm well aware that members will wish to debate this report, so I'll try and be as brief as possible and confine myself to just some salient and most important points. Members will recall that we carried out the first consultation on the town centre vision in July and August of this year, and the responses to that consultation, quite a number of responses, were analysed by our consultants, Troy Planning and Design, and they formed the results of that analysis form the basis of the draft vision before you tonight. The vision sets out a vision statement and goals, the town-wide initiatives, town centre proposals, delivery, the next steps, where we go next, a second consultation, that is, which hopefully will take place from the 7th of December this year to the 10th of January next year, should you approve this tonight. Hopefully there'll be further workshops and there'll possibly be a pre-recorded webinar, all online, so that the public, people of Daventry, can fully take part in the second consultation. Now, this is most important, the timetable. I've mentioned the dates of the second consultation. This will be followed by a further analysis and a draft of the final vision statement. And hopefully, if we go to time, that'll be submitted to strategy group on the 4th of March next year, with a recommendation to full council on the 25th of March next year. So it's a tight timetable, like most of the projects that I'm involved with, and trying to get them done before Daventry Council disappears and the unitary takes over. If we get this draft TCV done in time, then it will be respected by West Northants Council, as that was the wishes of Daventry people. Obviously, it will need to be ratified by Daventry Town Council and, of course, West Northants, but time is of the essence here. So I'll leave it open to members now to discuss the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I believe Councillor James. Councillor Morgan wants to second this. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, as a resident of Daventry itself, living only basically pretty much in the town centre, and having served Abbey South for 8 years now, before that a town council member, I'd very much like to second. This is great to see this report in here. I'm sure there's lots of debate points in here, and obviously the point of the consultation, plus the debate we're going to have this evening. And it fills me with a great deal of pride and satisfaction that we're able to present this and then really get stuck into this detail and take it forward. Thank you, Chair. That's all this particular point.
Thank you, Steve, Councillor Morgan. So just to remind members now on the process. So we've got the strategy group recommendation proposed and seconded. So before being put to the vote, Councillor Rich will be invited to present the motion, which he duly amended and which he can then decide what he wants to do with that motion. So we now go to a debate. We won't vote on it until we debate the motion. So on the recommendation before you, any people want to contribute or make a contribution before we get to the motion? Okay, no one wants to speak. Oh, no. Yes, Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly confused about how we're going to structure the next few minutes of debate. There is the motion that that Councillor Dabbs and I would like to propose.
Yeah.
There is a separate discussion that needs to have. Our motion does not deal with the draft document, and so there is a need for a discussion around that before we then vote on the.
Well, I was making that point, Councillor Ritchie. We won't come to any vote.
All right. Well, I just didn't quite follow it. Yeah.
Yeah, until we discuss your motion.
Yeah.
So the hands up now about the recommendation before us, or about the motion. Councillor Dabbs, Councillor Randall. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm saying now is we can go to the motion if you want, Councillor Ritchie, see what comes out of that debate, and then we come back to the recommendations before us. So can I hand over to Councillor Dabbs? Or Councillor Ritchie, sorry, Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, look, can Councillor Ritchie, as a proposer, go first, please?
Yeah, Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I'm sure that Councillor Dabbs would have done even better, but however, I hope he'll have his chance. Look, this motion is not about the document that Troy Consulting has produced, because this was written before we knew that what the document would say, or even that a document existed. It's about the nature of consultation. We believe that consultation has got to be a lot more than just box ticking or responding to questions on a sort of predetermined agenda. It's not the way that we engage with people. We don't just, we don't just ask them questions and rely on these answers. We have conversations with them. People's views aren't fixed. They're formed through interactions with others, and that is the way that we should work as a council. People's views are refined by dialogue. They reflect on the arguments that have been made by others, and there are plenty of examples about how this can be done at an institutional level. Lockdown, of course, makes face-to-face conversations more difficult, but that's not an excuse for having a fairly shallow form of consultation, which does not involve deliberation. And for most of the organizations and experts that talk about this sort of exercise, deliberation is perhaps the key word, and many have pointed out it is the thing that is most often not done. Some of you will have seen the RSA and the Royal Society of the Arts wonderful document with the recommendations that it produced and how you should consult. I know that many of you will have seen it, because if you're in the council in 2017, I sent it to you all. I know that doesn't necessarily mean that you all read it, but it makes the strong point that, consultation of the sort that we've had has got to be just a very first step. It's everything else that comes afterwards that makes it important and actually gives the buy-in to the eventual recommendations. I mentioned RSA, the Town and Country Planning Association. They also have produced great stuff proposing a different form of engagement for this sort of exercise. Later in the meeting, we're going to look at the document, and I will want to comment on that. But it does rather appear, and I don't want to jump ahead, that many of the proposals are things that may have come from the consultants rather from residents. It's as if the residents' ideas have not shaped the agenda. It's already been set out. And when it comes to the document we're going to look at, a point that I will make, and let me just make it now, that for each area of Daventry, there is one option. It's sort of a Henry Ford form of consultation. Choose what you want, as damns the colour, but as long as it's black. I just think this is not the way that we get buy-in from people. I think that if the new vision is to avoid the fate of its predecessor, it needs to be one that has grown from the ideas and proposals of residents themselves. And in spite of coded restrictions, there is still time to engage with people, working with them in developing a vision that has got to be theirs because it will remain theirs long after DDC has gone. Now, I hope that many of you will support this motion. I do appreciate that a lot of you will have been primed to vote against. But that's not a problem. 2 years ago, we proposed that there should be a consultation to lead to a new vision for Daventry Town. You all voted against, and then you introduced the consultation to have a new vision for Daventry Town. Last year, we proposed that for that consultation, you should employ consultants who have worked in the school before. And of course, what you did was totally voted against it, but then went ahead and employed consultants. However you vote for this one, let's just make sure that we focus on having a consultation that actually means something and that actually reflects the way that people think. We want a conversation with the residents of Daventry, and that we want them to be fully involved in formulating the ideas.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Dabbs on the motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm seconding this motion. Just a few comments that I would like to make. I have substantial concerns with the consultation period, 7th of December to the 10th of January. And although I can see that that's more than a month, we have Christmas stuck right in the middle. And this concerns me greatly because normally with Christmas, it means about a 2-week shutdown in all normal activities. Maybe it'll lend itself to lots of residents being bored with Christmas and will perhaps take part in the consultation. But I just wonder whether the impact will be that we'll have very small responses, and that certainly would be very concerning. Now, I do recognise that time is of the essence for this council, since it meets its demise reasonably early next year, but I still believe that a proper consultation job needs to be undertaken for the new vision. If that substantial feedback and participation is not achieved, we'll not be able to say with confidence that whatever is proposed for the final vision, that it will have had the backing of the Daventry Town and District residents. Without this backing, any vision will be doomed to fail. It's not going to be sustainable in the long term. So instead of what we might call a clear, bright vision, we will have a somewhat murky and blurred vision. I fear too tight a time limit has been put on the process, and I don't want that to be a restriction, so we create what comes out to be a very poor, unambitious plan for the town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair, very much. Just a couple of observations, really, to build on the points from Councillor Ritchie. I want to link back to the acknowledgement of the report that 3 of us from cross-party groups compiled and put together on the climate emergency. One of the things that I believe added to the robustness and, in fact, the quality of that report, which Councillor Ritchie led, was in fact the fact that we ran some public meetings. Now, of course, we're in a situation right now where we can't do that in a physical sense. However, many of us, I'm sure, over the last 9 months have got very familiar with operating in our Zoom environments or Teams or WebEx or whatever it might be. And in fact, many of us have probably attended various different types of conferences in engagement. So I would echo and support Councillor Ritchie's points. I do think it is possible to engage. And I mean engage in the sense of actually listening to people, hearing what they have to say, recognising their emotions and feelings about things which you do not get from a simple tick box exercise. So I would echo that. Again, the comment about the timetable I completely accept, and it's really important that this is completed before vesting day and all the necessary work is done. But I do think it is possible. At the climate meeting we hosted, we have 55 members of the public. So I think it is feasible to do, even if it has to be done electronically. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Auger.
Yeah, thank you. I have a lot of sympathy for the first 3 speakers, but we can't support this motion. Obviously, we can't be tying people's hands together. We've got a short period of time to get this work done, and it may not be perfect. But I also disagree. I do disagree that the public haven't had their say. I think we need to read the consultation to understand the public input in there and the important things that they have come up with. But may I make a suggestion? Although I don't agree with the motion, I think our colleagues, our opposition colleagues, do have a lot to say. So I would invite them to work with Councillor Councillor James, with their ideas to see what improvements can be made. You know, ideas are really important. It's not really about emotion and tying the administration's hands, so they have to do it one way. It's about what is feasibly possible with COVID-19 and the time restraints we have. And I'm sure if they would liaise with our side, then we can come up with a plan that is probably be better. I invite them to engage, help support us in getting this second phase consultation done, but not by motion, but by actually talking to each other.
Thank you indeed, Councillor Auger. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, with apologies to Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Dabbs, I do concur with my colleague, Councillor Auger. I think that the current proposals for consultation will actually harness the qualitative feedback that we need in order to continue our work in enhancing the town centre vision and getting constructive feedback from residents. I do think that there is a risk in the proposal that, if I can quote from the motion, that the process would include a method of measuring the popular support to each significant proposal. I think that's an extremely complex ask to make of a consultation. It's absolutely right that we get out into the public and have a conversation with residents by whatever means possible. But to actually engage in any kind of representative measuring of popular support is, I fear, beyond our means. We can certainly take opinions, and where those opinions shed light on hitherto unrecognised concerns or problems that may arise, then that is where the real value lies in consultation, in my view, and that's what makes it such a valuable exercise. So, I would just like to emphasise that I entirely respect the intent and the ethos behind the motion that Councillors Ritchie and Dabbs have brought. I know how committed they are to the democratic process, especially within the town of Daventry. But I just fear that the specific requests being made via this motion are untenable, and I think that we should proceed with the planned consultation before us.
Thank you, indeed, Councillor Brown. The advice I've been given actually is we move to the vote on the strategy group item first, and then we move to the vote on the motion, because obviously both have been debated now. So members have got all the information they require to take a decision on both.
Chairman?
Yes?
So, sorry, if I may just come in there. I think effectively what we've got now is that the motion from Councillors Ritchie and Dabbs is in effect an amendment to the motion tabled by Councillor James. So I believe it's correct if we take that motion, the Councillor Ritchie motion, as an amendment.
As an amendment.
Yes, and then move to the
substantive item.
Yeah. Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move a vote on the amendment first, which is the motion from Councillor Dabbs and Councillor Ritchie.
Chairman, you've got two more speakers indicated.
Yes, I've just seen that. Yes, I've seen that, Tony. Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Well, I don't know who the other speaker is, Chair, but
well, your colleagues, Councillor Ritchie.
To exercise my reply to the vote, or reply to the debate.
I'll do that in due course. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Randall. Councillor Randall.
Chairman, she's dropped out of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I'll let you respond, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I did want to say, Councillor Auger has, suggested we should engage with the process. We have engaged with this process right from the outset. Some of us spent days, indeed weeks, over the summer months, distributing leaflets in Daventry, not telling people what to say to the vision consultation, but telling that it was there. And this was an important opportunity, an important democratic opportunity for people in Daventry to have their voice on what their town centre was going to look like in the future. We have pushed this as hard as we can. I totally reject the nonsense that we've heard from Councillor Brown. Why can't we give people an opportunity to come forward with ideas and to put them in a position where we can assess how much support there is for ideas. Just look at the way in which most people interact these days. You have got Facebook. People post something, somebody else comments, somebody agrees saying that's a great idea, somebody says, no, it's not. Haven't you thought about how this would affect somewhere else? And so the debate goes on. And it may be that through that process, people's views change. Hopefully, a consensus emerges. Of course, not everybody is going to agree. But there have got to be ways in which we can measure public opinion in that way, allowing them effectively to shape what are the proposals that they're voting on, not simply asking them a question and totaling up how many ticked yes and how many tick no. I know that there were opportunities within the consultation. I do not know if we have got access as members to see what was proposed and how these proposals were dealt with. But there are various proposals that appear in the little balloons and little diagrams in the graphics that go with the first part of the report on the responses to phase 1 of the consultation, but no mention of them at all when it comes to the second part. I would point out that the thing that got the most top priorities in the first part of the consultation, green spaces over the top of shops, and yet when it comes to it, there is no mention of what you could do on the Eastern Way field, as if that's simply taken out, that you can't discuss something in which the council has got a view. It's the business community discussion that I think raised the point. They, I think, do mention an outboard pool. That doesn't appear at all. There should at least be an opportunity and a role for consultants to come back to try to explain what is feasible and why some things might not be feasible. But it is not the role of the consultancy to direct the conversation and to direct the issues that are going to be discussed. And that is my concern with this particular consultation. It may be that the consultants fear that they are up against both a deadline and the constraints of lockdown, but it is still possible. If they can do it on Facebook, they should be able to do it on the consultation website.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. This is going to conclude the debate on the motion, or the amendment, I should say, and then we can move to the substantive item afterwards. So, Jeffrey, can we move to a vote on the amendment, please?
Members, you have 20 seconds. Chairman, we've got 5 voting in favour, 19 against and 4 abstentions.
Thank you. So that amendment's been lost. We now move to the substantive item now on your paper, strategy group. I'll open up again with Councillor James on what you heard so far, Councillor James. You're going to put that forward now as a formal proposal?
Yes, I'd like to put it forward as a formal proposal. Would you like me to read out the recommendation?
No, I think members have got the detail on the papers before them, unless members want it read out. No one's showing a hand on that at the moment. Thank you. And the seconder for your proposal was Colin Morgan.
Chair, thank you. No, nothing further to add. Happy to second it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dabbs.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody involved in this analysis, especially the consultants and the data collection, for a job well done. I think reading of the results is very interesting and very informative. The only problem is that's the only good bits, I think. I know the crux of the problem being identified here is we have too many people visiting the town centre for a short period of time, between 1 and 2 hours. So it seems very clear to me people are not doing much more than shopping, maybe staying for a coffee, something like that, but otherwise moving away quite quickly. I guess the argument there would be, I don't have anything else to stay in town for. I hope that the new cinema and associated restaurants might have some positive impact on this. But unfortunately, the cinema is not going to achieve everything by itself. And with the recent impact of COVID making us change our lives significantly, and here we are in this meeting, we're all here on Zoom and we've got used to lots of Zoom meetings in our lives. It must save some members hours of travel, I'm sure. But I'm also sure that many workplaces have now permanently changed through the experience of workers being forced to work remotely and finding now that this actually has many advantages. Perhaps they won't be going back to the normal 5 days in the office again. This, of course, impacts on commuting patterns, work patterns, hours of leisure time and use, and travel generally. So leisure hours have changed. We've not been able to attend live sporting events, theatre or cinema. We can, and many people do, download or stream content, the content that we want to see, by the various media streams these days. We are hoping with this vaccine, but perhaps we'll get back to normality soon. It's going to be some months, so I think. But I somehow believe that many of these enforced changes will actually persist into the longer term. Travel will be greatly affected, but what about cinemas? Will people flock back to the cinemas when they're all open? I feel there's a certain danger there. But onto the proposals. What has been proposed? Yes, I note the Eastern Way School proposals included, as Councillor Ritchie mentions. I think that was a mistake, but it helps to lead me on to what we might call the most wanted outcomes, what people want. I think, unfortunately, the slow death of the high street is being ignored in people's main desire for more shops. We've had the recent news of administrations of a couple of more shops, Bon Marché, Daventry Perkins, for instance. Have we got any more shops in the pipeline where they may go under? That would be unfortunate, but it does create the notion, why would anybody want to create a shop in this climate? Perhaps an internet presence is better. What is more green space? Now, I think that was an interesting comment. What were people referring to? Were they referring to Eastern Way? Were they referring to green spaces in the town, which the proposal seems to be pushing forward? I think, unfortunately, that's not clear. More events, that was very popular. That was one of the three top items. What sort of events? Where are they going to be hosted? Are they going to be large events or small events? You've got rid of a massive opportunity if you get rid of Eastern Way to stage large events. So are they all going to be small events? But what sort of events? I think all of these three important areas should be properly developed in the next stage of the consultation. But unfortunately, with the draft that's been proposed, I have big issues. I can't go into detail because we have limited time. So I'll see if I can summarize reasonably quickly. We have the reference to events, cafe culture, outdoor street space and design. I think that's a bit loose and woolly. It might work if we had a dose of Mediterranean weather, but is it going to work in winter? It's cold, it's wet, it's dark. And of all those proposals, I think we have 1 to 15. I looked at all of those and thought only 9. Number 9 looked promising. That was for promising to do or suggesting to do certain activities near the wreck, which is by Tesco. And I think, yeah, good. That's a good starting point. It's just the other 14 are somewhat lacking in ambition. And I think if I can summarize the rest, I think it just looks at smartening the place up a bit, but not creating an innovative solution for a town centre and what is unfortunately a high street that is dying. You might even say it's dead. Proposal 13. I'm just wondering whether proposal 13, that 13 is the number that's relevant here. I see that this is site 5 Mark 2.
That's 5 minutes, Chairman.
Again. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Just to summarise, I will vote against this. It's too weak, it lacks ambition and it lacks innovation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you much indeed, Councillor Dabbs. Councillor, you got a quick point?
Very quick. First of all, I just would like to thank all the members of the public that contributed, and glad that Councillor Stephen Dabbs dismisses their views and opinions so outrightly. And the other thing is I read recently, quite interestingly, Chair, that there will be a boost to going out, cinemas, everything. There's quite a optimistic outlook when COVID is under control. So I have a more optimistic outlook based on some of the assessments that are being done globally, and rather than the pessimistic approach by Councillor Dabbs. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Olga. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I read through this and I was quite surprised actually with some of the proposals, because I felt actually, were these proposals come from these consultations, or were they ideas from officers to put in place to sort out a problem? There's start off with Bowen Square. Now, first of all, it's Bowen Square to become maybe more pedestrianised, which is fine, but it's owned by a private company. And obviously Waitrose customers use that car park for Waitrose. So I don't really think that they're going to want to get rid of their parking spaces. But there's, we haven't got a lot of control over that. Then it goes on to New Street, one way to make New Street one way. Now, New Street becomes a nuisance when people can't get into Bowen Square and they just queue and wait for a parking space. So to spend all that money to make it one way, surely for that problem, you need to just say, if you can't get in, you move on, you go and find somewhere else to park. You don't block the road up, because nobody should be blocking a road. So to me, that was quite easily, an easy fix. Just don't block the road. Don't try and squash in there. Then you'd got, well, I think this is what I'm reading, but I can't understand whether I'm reading it right. New Street car park proposal number 8, to introduce a 3-storey mixed-use design scheme on the footprint of an existing car park. Now, does that mean make a 3-storey car park, or does that mean to get rid of the car park when we've already got a lot of parking issues in the town? So I wasn't quite sure of actually what that meant there.
Okay, Councillor James to confirm that in a minute. Thank you.
Okay. And then there was New Street Recreation Ground. Yeah, okay, we all want to see things happen there. There's lots and lots of opportunity in there. Then there's Sheaf Street, then it's taken out bollards. Then there was Foundry Court to take off the roof. And I'm thinking, I'm reading all through it and I'm thinking, we've got a real opportunity here. And what actually are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve something that actually keeps residents in the town where they're spending their money? Do we want people to come into the town to enhance things and to spend their money? What are we actually trying to achieve? Because when I'm reading all through this, I'm thinking, you take a roof off Foundry Court, would that encourage me to come shopping in Daventry or come to Daventry? No. Removing bollard and railings, would that encourage me? No. Put a one-way street in, would that encourage me? No. To make the high street more pedestrianised, we've done that years ago because we widened the pavements. Actually, a lot of those shops haven't got anywhere out the back where they can have deliveries. So you make that more pedestrianised, you cause more shops to close because they can't get deliveries in. So I'm thinking, really, I don't actually know what we're trying to achieve. Now, there were lots of ideas from people. One of them was the outdoor pool that they've now gathered over 2,000 signatures on to reintroduce an outdoor pool. No mention of anything like that. No mention of something that actually would bring people in, keep people in and put us on the map. So my question is, what are we trying to achieve? Eastern Way, obviously, that is an area loved by people. It was on here. People did respond to it. Now you want to put a school in, which will force another school to close. County would never put a school in Daventry, last place, because we've got spaces available. So if that doesn't come to fruition, which maybe it won't because government are spending all this money now and they may be running out, so they might not want to build a free school, that will then give us an ideal opportunity to have a really amazing space from the Hollows all the way down that area to create something that is absolutely amazing for this town, that would keep people in, that would bring people in, that would be vibrant. You know, we're just stale, we're boring. Mobile phones is something that people live by now. Where in Daventry can you charge a mobile phone? The only place I can think of really is maybe Cooney's and McDonald's. There's nowhere outside. You go to rugby, they've got outdoor sport equipment where you can pedal on a cycle and charge your phone, which encourages you to use that. Be great for the children. What in here really have we got going forward? I looked at Boddington Parish Council, you know, not far from Woodford and Byfield today. Oh my goodness, you want to see what they have created.
Chairman.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Created an amazing area.
The time's up, Councillor Randall. Thank you.
So boring, stale. We could have done so much more.
Thank you, Councillor Randall.
So disappointed.
Councillor Ritchie.
Oh, just one more. Tennis
No,
courts.
Councillor Randall, your time's up. Sorry.
Parker,
Ritchie.
do not hire tennis courts. They need resurfacing.
Councillor Randall, time up. Thank you.
Is no longer available. So you need to know that. But you should have got in touch with the school to find that out.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Before I begin my contribution, so before you start the clock running, look, I would like to say that on a matter of this importance to Daventry, it's a pity that we don't actually allow a little bit longer on the debate. And the second thing, I raised my electronic hand earlier when Councillor Brown was talking. The suggestion that Councillor Dabbs was disregarding the views of the people of Daventry, I thought was a shameful suggestion. And I feel that it just brings discredit onto the whole business of this council if we conduct our affairs in that way. I hope that after the meeting...
Well, Councillor Brown will have his right to reply to that later on.
I hope it will be by the nature of an apology. Now, there are one or two questions which I have got in this document. You know, it says that Bowen Square ought to be, it suggests it should be pedestrianised, at least they should take cars out of it. Well, that's something I've always favoured, but it only makes sense if you put something else back there. I notice, and I learned this from the Daventry Express rather than from Daventry District Council, that the Bowen Square is now under new management. I mean, that's a fairly major thing for Daventry, and I'm surprised that we as councillors were not informed. The Daventry Express seemed to suggest that the new management had ideas for Bowen Square. Have they been part of the Troy consultation? I think it's important that somebody tells them what they have taken on. Troy seems to want there to be no cars in Bowen Square, but they also want electric charging points there. I assume they're not talking about the things for Councillor Randall's phone. You know, there are some of these contradictions, but let me just talk about, you know, after all, if we are going to have a vibrant town, we have got to listen to the business community as well as residents. And it's the business community, let me just pick out some of the things that they actually ask for. They're the people that have asked in their forum. They asked for an outdoor swimming pool, which isn't mentioned anywhere. They wanted the redevelopment of the Sheaf Street bandstand. Troy wants to pull it down. The business community wants to preserve the Eastern Way open space, which was sort of banned from even being part of the consultation. If we don't even listen to our business community, what hope have we for this? Now, the question I would raise is that if we were a small village, we would be in a position where we could put together a neighbourhood development plan. We would all be able to contribute our ideas to it. And once it was formed, we would have a referendum on whether the village accepted it. Now, I know that we are going out of business at the end of April. But what would the consequences be? And I hope that somebody will be able to come back and tell me. if this project were put into the hands of the town council with an appropriate budget, so that it could actually continue in the same way as a village might be able to continue work on its neighbourhood development plan. It can continue to work on it. Whether it decides to continue using Troy would be no doubt a matter for negotiation. But it could allow a lot more time for having a discussion, perhaps into next year, when it is perfectly possible, it could be perfectly possible for people actually come to meetings and be involved in public discussions and debates, and it could have the opportunity for people to actually go and vote on it. So that unlike the vision that was formed back in 2004, people in Daventry would own it. They couldn't turn around later and criticise it. They could criticise the 2004 one because they felt they were not part of it. It was something that was imposed upon them. In this way, let's make the vision of truly a division of the people of Daventry. But I would be grateful if somebody could respond to these questions. And if there is unless there is a strong reason for saying that we must have all this completed by a March council meeting, that we can't even have a special council meeting towards the end of April, then I would like to propose an amendment suggesting that we should change the timetable.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll let Councillor James come back on that. It's his item. You've got Councillor Brown coming on very shortly. Councillor Dabbs, you come back. You've spoken already. Do you want to say quick?
Yes, I'd like to counter what Councillor Auger said, so I'll wait my turn.
But it is your turn, sir.
Okay, if it's my turn, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to say I disagree intently with what Councillor Auger said about me dismissing people's views. Absolutely not. I think the people's views are absolutely vital to this process. What we seem to have here is people's views have been sent through, and I think it was my opening remarks that I thought a very good piece of analysis had been done. That was the good work. The poor quality work, that I see it, is the draft vision, that those results haven't been converted into anything resembling anything sensible. I don't see how you say that that draft vision complies with what people have been expressing views on.
That point's been made, Councillor Dabbs, but I think your main criticism was Councillor Auger's point about you. So that's been noted. Thank you. Councillor Adam Brown.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, on a personal explanation, I think Councillor Ritchie accused me of making the comment that Councillor Dabbs has now attributed to Councillor Auger. Councillor Ritchie had asked for me to apologise to Councillor Dabbs. As that's not necessary, may I ask if Councillor Ritchie is happy to apologise to me for misattributing the quote?
I'm very happy to apologise. I couldn't quite see who was speaking at the time, and it did sound like you. The problem. But my apologies. But I hope that Councillor Auger will note that that my criticisms of you need to be transferred to him.
I'm sure Councillor Auger's noted that. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to Councillor Ritchie for his gracious apology, and he's a gentleman as ever. I'd just like to comment very briefly on the town centre vision before us. I do think that now more than ever, it is absolutely vital that we have a strategic document to protect and further the interests of Daventry Town, not only because of the changing landscape of local government in Northamptonshire, but moreover because of the economic news that we've seen so recently with the demise of Arcadia Group and Debenhams and so many other turbulent times for the retail industry more generally. I have to say, I think there's an awful lot of positive recommendations and positive steps set out in this town centre vision. And I think one key point to note is that within the recommendations, it does establish that an annual review will take place. And that's vital because it means that this will be a living document able to be reassessed and readapted to the needs of Daventry. And I think by getting this work in place now, by handing it over to the new unitary authority, it will mean that the unitary authority has a starting point to work in the interest of Daventry, whereas without a vision document, it may be that Daventry falls down the pecking order. So I ask, therefore, that, despite their reservations about the document, that our Labour colleagues recognise the dangers of leaving Daventry without a town centre vision as we hand over to West Northamptonshire Council, and the very real benefits of having at least a starting point and an opening point to a debate about how we want to see Daventry evolve and develop. And from there, I'm sure that there will be democratic processes in place at West Northamptonshire Council for ideas such as those put forward by Councillor Randall, Councillor Dabbs and Councillor Ritchie to be considered fully and for their potential to be realised under the auspices of the new council. So I would suggest again, Mr. Chairman, that I think it would be a very dangerous step to take to dismiss this document, simply because it would leave Daventry at a disadvantage. Whereas by approving the document, we give Daventry every possibility of thriving as we move into West Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thanks indeed, Councillor Brown, for that. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly concerned to hear that the comment from Councillor Brown that there is a risk of Daventry dropping down the pecking order. That won't be great news for people to hear in Daventry, I'm sure. So I hope that those that get elected to represent our old Daventry district in the new authority will make sure that that doesn't happen. It's all very well to have a future vision. I think it's fantastic to have a future vision. It does seem a little strange to be crushing this into a very short period of months, when in fact it's a vision that in theory, according to the document, lasts to 2035. So there is a risk there, of course, when you crash anything into a short period of time, that maybe you do miss things and you don't take the opportunity to fully explore it. That is not saying that I do not agree with the idea of making sure that it is under the radar before vesting day, because it sounds like that's critically important for the future. The high streets are fundamentally changing. They've been changing for many years. They are drastically changing at the moment, radically. And I would argue that they're never going to be back to the same state that they ever were as high streets. And I can't help but make the reference back to the motion that we put forward earlier this evening. Town centres, shopping, high streets rely on people spending in the economy. If we don't support the people in the economy, then how can we expect them to go out and spend their money in our fantastic town centres? How good or bad or ugly they are, it's a cyclical process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor James, would you like to come back now? Some points have been raised, or do you want to just move to the vote?
You're muted, Councillor James.
I suppose. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I had no input into this particular vision statement or design, and I'm glad that I didn't, because I appreciate what the planning consultants have come up with. And as I see it, what they've tried to do is to take a town centre, which is quite divided and separate, and to bring it into one cohesive unit with cycling and walkway accesses and gateways. And they've tried to come up with proposals for improving the vistas from the street so that one looks out and one can see some attractive view at the end of it. And accessibility is the key to it. That's how I see it, having received this document for the first time last week. Now, most of you that shop in Daventry will know this. What happens is you drive into Daventry, if you live outside, you park your car in Tesco's car park, you decide whether do I go to Tesco's first or do I not go, or do I go to Waitrose, and then you it's called in Daventry walking the triangle. And that's down to the high street, down the high street, back up Sheaf Street to the post office, and then back to the car park. Now, what they've tried to do is to make it much more of an experience than that by making better use of some of the areas that we've got in Daventry, which are essentially blocked off or cluttered or dark and so on. So that's how I interpret this vision statement. Nothing is written in tablets of stone. It's like a framework for any possible development that might happen at some time in the future. And one of the good things about it that I thought was to bring Waterloo, what we used to call Jubilee Park, that's what it was called in the 1950s, and to bring that into the town centre as well. Once, many children were not allowed to go and play down there. Now, what they're trying to do is want to do is to provide an access to that with possibly some form of water feature there to make good use of it, fully used than the pitches that it's used as now. So it brings it all into being. As far as Site 5 is concerned, that is just an open book on a mixed-use development. And once the grandiose shopping scheme that we're going to have down there is probably now fading into obscurity, except perhaps for food shopping and so on. But I do see merit in this. As I say, nothing is written in tablets of stone. On the second consultation, a lot of this might be really criticised by the public and perhaps have to be reversed. But unless we consult the public in the best way that we can, given the current situation, we're not going to get anywhere at all. And there can be no question of leaving this, because if it's left, I think I've got a pretty good idea that it won't be taken up again by the incoming authority. They've got other priorities that the public value more than their town centre vision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor James. Jubilee, can we now move to the vote, please? Sorry, Councillor Randall. I've just come to the end of the speakers. So can we move to the vote, please, Jubilee, on the two resolved items on page 80, page 61 of the paper, sorry.
Okay, members, you've got 20 seconds. Got 22 voting in favour, 3 against and 4 abstentions.
Thank you, Jubilee. So that's carried by a fair majority there, 22, 3 against, 4 abstentions. Thank you. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Braunston to Daventry Cycle Track Business Plan. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think this is one item that there'll be a lot of cross-party support for this. It's something which has been in the eyes of the council for a long, long time. And finally, we're getting somewhere with this. And it's merely a matter of getting the business plan approved this evening so that we can go forward then to get planning permission and maybe even to get a start on construction of this track before our demise, as it were. And in that respect, I just bring your attention to this. On page 199, there is a summary programme. If we approve this tonight, then it's possible that a planning application be worked up for consideration in February of next year. We can probably appoint a contractor also in February with a start on site in March 2021, with practical completion in June of next year. And then, of course, the handover, the defects correction, and any lessons learned from that report. So we could get a start on this, and I would hope that we can do before the end of our DDC's life. It's a project that we've budgeted for. It's in it with SIL payments, a budget of 730,000, including contingencies. We've obtained the necessary approvals to use land which belongs to Christchurch College, Oxford, to provide the link which goes from Farnborough Drive to the mouth of the Braunston Tunnel. And I do commend this one to you. I'm sure the people of Braunston will appreciate it, as will the people of Daventry too. And of course, it's another aspect of accessibility.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to second this proposal. It was 6 years ago that I walked the proposed route with Abigail, who was in fact then a councillor for Braunston, delightful lady, very eloquent councillor, very, very good. And it was our complete agreement that we should try and push this as much as we could and deliver this this project. Since then, Jason, who is around here tonight, and myself have pressed on pretty much whenever we can. And eventually, well, the original idea was to take the old railway line all the way through from Braunston, as you know. But there was a little bit of a problem there with one of the landowners. Anyway, the upshot of it is we then had to negotiate with the Oxford University, and anybody that's ever had to negotiate with a body like that will know that wasn't easy. Anyway, it all's been resolved, taken quite a long time, and here we are. So, and I'd like to say before I second it is the officers have been outstanding. It's been a tricky job, to say the least, and in particular, you may have forgotten, but on those 6 years ago, I did walk the line with Gary Underhill. So I thought Gary's done a lot there. So so great stuff for the officers. So on that note, I'm delighted that I can second it.
Very much, Steve, that positive contribution, Councillor Longley. Councillor Jason Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what Councillor Longley has stated. This has been rather protracted, but that doesn't take away from the tenacity of officers and of Councillor Longley, Councillor, well, Mrs. Campbell now, and myself throughout that period. This money has been allocated for a while now. I'd just like to congratulate both Simon Bowers and Gary Underhill on a very, very robust and comprehensive business plan. And the corporate objectives in there are our objectives. I'd like to hopefully enjoy a complete acceptance of this due to the fact that it does adhere to ongoing safety issues in terms of commuting to Daventry and Daventry to Braunston. Environment and leisure is met, and those corporate objectives are aligned to the health and well-being of individuals, the way that this can propagate employment also, and it's also been predicated upon a neighbourhood plan which was pre-surveys across the village, and the vast majority of people wanted this to be built, this cycle path, which has been carefully planned. That, don't get me wrong, I do acknowledge the very few people that had some objections, very, very few. But by and large, this is wanted by both people in Braunston, and although I haven't canvassed people in the Middlemore area, anecdotally, the positive responses that I've had from them as well, in terms of being able to use this as a leisure activity and get out into the countryside. So absolutely support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Again, another very positive contribution. Councillor Dabbs.
Thank you, Chair. Well, you'd be very pleased that I'm not going to give the positive.
I was hoping for a hat-trick there, Councillor Dabbs.
Pardon?
I was hoping for a hat-trick of positives.
Well, there we go. I wouldn't want to change my form. Oh dear. Right, here we go. I have to say at the outset, I'm in favour of cycling. I'm in favour of off-road cycling schemes. I think potentially this is a great idea. Where I find this falls completely apart is the lack of evidence. We call it a business plan, but unfortunately, it's not a business plan. And it even only got the very vaguest of costings in there. What I would expect to see is details of who's going to use this. Is it realistic to think that people are going to commute by it? Have you tried to do any research with employers in Daventry, where people come from? I think it would be entirely feasible to be asking employers, say on the north side of town where their employees work, if they all live in Rugby, they're not going to be using this cycle path. If it's one person in Broadston that would use it, that saves a car journey. That's brilliant. But that's surely not enough, and surely no justification. What about leisure use? Yes, people will want to use it. I'm concerned when I read the plans as that we seem to have this muddy slope at the end of it, and cooperation is needed with the CRT to hopefully improve that. I would want to see words of more encouragement than hopefully to have some sort of fundamental agreement with the CRT that they will improve it and it will be great. Otherwise, if it's going to be a challenge to cyclists, you won't get families using it because it'll be far too difficult. I've never been down there, I haven't actually looked at the terrain, but I cannot believe that it's flat. I've experienced the A45 on numerous occasions, and I've always commented to car passengers and so on, wouldn't it be horrendous to cycle up this? Forget the traffic, the hill just goes on and on. Touching on climate effect, we're not mentioning anything about the CO2 effects of this, either the CO2 emissions in the construction, how that might be relieved. If we're talking of saving car journeys, again, back to the research, how many people are going to use this? How many car journeys are going to be avoided? And therefore, what is the carbon saving going to be? We have declared a climate emergency, and we don't seem to be thinking of climate emergency whenever we have these projects. Yes, it's great in its potential, but I don't see, unless I've completely missed all these reports, where is this potential residing? I'm sure the people of Braunston will love to have this. Perhaps I will use it. Who knows? But nobody's asked me whether it's a good idea. Nobody has done any research to see what use will be made on it. So I'm somewhat disappointed. I'll just take an extreme opposing view. With 700,000 seems to be a great deal of cost at about £1,000 a metre. I have no idea whether that's a very reasonable price or not, and maybe it's only a ballpark, but just to compare it, how many electric car charging points could be financed with that? You know, quite a few, I would imagine, and this district is sadly lacking in any charging posts at all available to the public, apart from outside the council offices. That's just not good enough, and surely that would have a massive carbon effect, a positive offsetting effect, and also lead the district into more electric car use. So I'm sorry, Chair. I'm sorry, Councillor Pritchard. I cannot actually support this in the form. I don't think the groundwork has been done. So that's my opinion. I'm afraid it's negative again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your opinion, Councillor Dabbs. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is, in general, a really, really good idea. It's really, really nice. I do have some reservations about the overall route, particularly the slope at the end, because I do walk this fairly regularly, and despite what Councillor Dabbs says, this is a fairly well-used walking route already, as it links up with the tunnel track back over the other way. So, if you walk down there, there's actually a track there, so people use it all the time, just as a walking route, and I think it will generally encourage people to get on their bikes or get walking over there even more if this is put in place, because at times it is a bit of a trudge through the mud at in some of the dips at the bottom of the hill and working around the headland of the fields. So it is a really, really good idea. I think it will be well used. It links, as I said, it links back into the tunnel path, it links back onto the canal, and it links Middlemore. And it links to new developments as well around Daventry. I think it's an excellent idea. My only proviso is it's just a real shame it doesn't follow the whole railway route, which is genuinely flat. If you fight your way through the thickets that is the railway line now, it's a genuinely flat route, and if that could have been used without the horrible slope at the end, and then it would have been absolutely excellent. But overall, it's a good idea. And the only other thing I'd say is it's just the surface of the path and its maintenance. Some of the compacted materials that are used just rut up so easily, particularly in the wet spots that you do find along this path. And I do think it's important that we do look at the Sustrans preferred substrates for use on the path, and make sure that this takes us sort of 30 years, gives us 30 years of use and not just 5 years. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And of course, I believe you're a keen cyclist as well. Is that right? You're still a keen cyclist, Councillor Wesley?
Yes, I am a keen cyclist, and
Councillor
Daventry is right. Riding up out of Braunston is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
The only option is riding back through Braunston Village and into Daventry, which is an equal nightmare.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All I'd like to say is hopefully that we will put down the correct surface, and we will maybe get in touch with cycling clubs, take on their views. Like Councillor Wesley is a keen cyclist. I'm sure he knows surfaces much more than, you know, a lot of us could begin to imagine, because the last thing we want to do is put down the wrong surface. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to demonstrate the open democracy that we have within the Labour Party. I support this, but having said that, it's usually very dangerous to ignore any of the arguments that Councillor Dabbs puts, and I have got a certain sympathy for a lot of them. I support it. I think it's unfortunate and to me surprising that it is so expensive. As has been said, it's not just that people walk from Middlemore down to Braunston and back. There are many who actually enjoy cycling down, even as it is at the moment. And it strikes me it's the sort of area where there's a particular sort of genre of cyclists that seem to relish going through muddy puddles and things to get down. But I'm grateful to Councillor Verlongley for at last conceding that the problem about using the old rail track was not simply one of, was it damp or would it bear the weight of bikes when it had borne the weight of old steam trains, but the fact that there was an issue of somebody unwilling to part with the land that nobody had been able to negotiate. And, you know, if there is still hope of getting us back to using that rail track, then you have a cycle track from Braunston to Daventry that you could realistically expect a commuter to use. I mean, obviously a fairly fit commuter to use. As it stands at the moment, unless you have showers installed at the top of the hill at Middlemore, I cannot see anybody wanting to go and attempt to cycle up that hill. In terms of the surface, I would like to ask whether any thought has been given to having a surface that is sufficiently good for people who may be disabled and want to use disability scooters and things. I appreciate the bottom stage has pretty good brakes. And there is this problem, there is still this problem of steps down to the canal level. I understand at one stage there were still ongoing discussions with the Canal and River Trust about whether, you know, whether the possibilities of having something with a much more gradual gradient could be put in, taking that path down to level. Otherwise, it's sort of a block where beyond which, in each direction, you know, mobility scooters can go no further. But I just wonder if any thought has been given to that.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chairman. Leisure and physical activity are very much part of my portfolio and one of my passions to encourage this. I think some of these things will be sorted out when we come to the tender process, such as the surfacing, etc. I'm sure that there will be discussions on things like that. But I will refer back to not so long ago, when 2 years running, we got the Women's Cycle Tour here. And that was tremendously successful. And I know that cycling in Daventry is blooming. We have got a lot of strength in cycling in Daventry. I firmly believe this will work. It will encourage people to cycle, but also I believe it won't just be used for that. I believe people will also walk the route. So I personally support it. I agree with a lot that Councillor Wesley said, and I think that we must encourage these things, make the best use of what we got, and at the tender process, sort out some of the queries that have been raised here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Go back to you now, Councillor James. Anything else you want to add before we go to the vote on your resolved item?
Thank you, Chairman. No, other than to say that I do know it's going to be a high quality surface. It's not going to be a load of heavy gravel chucked in the mud. It's going to be a proper surface, high quality surface, so that it's accessible to all. As far as the slope is concerned down to the canal, that's a difficult problem because the Canal and River Trust won't let you tamper at all with the banks or the towpath. So that's a difficult one, but something that could be looked at again. We'll have to see, but certainly there need be no worries about the type of surface that's going there.
Well, thank you very much for that reassurance, Councillor James. Jeffrey, can we now move to the vote, please?
Councillors, you have 20 seconds. Chairman, that's 27 have voted in favour and 1 against, no abstentions.
Thank you, Steve. That's a very clear majority, so that's now been agreed. Thank you. Thanks for that, Councillor James and Councillor Longley. We now move on to committee memberships. Tony, just going to introduce the changes, please. Tony Gillett.
Yes, Chairman. There's been a couple of changes in the membership of council and groups announced in the last month or so. We had Deanna Eden resigning from council, and Councillor Jason Pritchard resigning from the Labour group. So that's caused a relook at the political balance and has resulted in some changes, and the changes are set out in the schedule before you on page 203 of the pack, showing the proposed changes to the membership of committees, and accordingly council are asked to agree those changes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Richard Auger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just would like to acknowledge the public service of Councillor Deanna Eden. Although it's a resignation, for me it's more a retirement. I've worked very close with her over the past 6 months, and she's done absolutely marvellously to get to this stage. But it was time for her to take a rest. She's given some wonderful service to Daventry Town and to this council, and we will be forever grateful for her contribution. And I'd like that acknowledged.
Well, thank you, Steve, Richard. And obviously, I fully endorse that as the previous leader. She's a wonderful member of this council and very, very conscientious in her duties. So I'm sure all councillors who know Deanna would also echo those words, Richard. So thank you very much indeed for that. So we agree the membership, I assume. No absent, no one against. Thank you. Outside bodies, just to note the following appointments on outside bodies. Everyone active. This again relates to the changes that just been mentioned by Tony Gillett. So Daniel Cribbin in place of Councillor Deanna Eden on everyone active. And Daventry North Liaison Board to appoint Kevin Parker in place of Councillor Deanna Eden. So those are just noted of the appointments. And that concludes tonight's business. So thank you much indeed for your attendance, and hope you all have a safe journey home where you are, most of you anyway. So thank you much indeed, and all the very best.
And a Merry Christmas, Chair.